I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast Julie Hartman. Julie is a Harvard graduate and has her own podcast titled Timeless. Julie, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Julie, I want to start out a little bit with your Harvard experience. What was it like going to Harvard, and what was kind of just your overall experience there?
I mean, it was great going to Harvard. I mean, I was only there in person for 2.5 years because in the middle of my sophomore year, I was sent home due to COVID, like so many college students. And I thought that I was going to be able to go back for my junior year, but they made us stay on Zoom. So the only full years at Harvard that I got were my freshman year and my senior year. So when I was there, I liked it a lot. I mean, I think there's this, idea that these colleges are super woke and super liberal and that all of the people there are super woke and super liberal. And that's true to some extent. But I was also really able to find some amazing friends, and I was very careful about the professors that I chose. I made sure that my professors were fair-minded. I sought out the few conservative professors. So overall, I speak highly of my experience. Although when I was there, I started off I came in as a progressive liberal because I grew up in Los Angeles, and that was kind of the accepted view there. But then when I was at Harvard, I became a conservative. So I guess you could say that Harvard had the opposite effect on me politically that it does on most students who go there.
That is so interesting, especially because you feel like Harvard isn't as bad as many conservatives feel, yet you also kind of found your conservative views more. When you were there, did you feel like it was kind of because Harvard was so leftist and so woke that made you more conservative? Or do you feel like it was maybe other forces that led to that? What was kind of your journey in changing your views?
Mm-hmm. My point earlier may have been a little bit confusing people. What I was trying to say is that although Harvard is super woke and lefty and they do have those people, there also are a lot of other people there who aren't as crazy as the news makes them out to be. But to your point, Harvard did in many ways make me conservative. The woke ideas there that I did see among a lot of students made me question my beliefs. And also, of course, Harvard's COVID policy I just thought was way overdone. By not even allowing on campus for a year and a half. And so that certainly contributed. But honestly, the thing that made me conservative, even more than the wokeism at Harvard, was just seeing what was going on in our country writ large. That I became a conservative in the summer of 2020. And of course, we all know that was the summer of the Black Lives Matter riots, and people were out protesting against systemic racism, and the same people who were out protesting were also telling us that we couldn't leave our houses because COVID was such a threat. So I think just seeing the hypocrisy writ large that was happening in our country really red-pilled me. And the person who influenced my thinking the most is Dennis Prager, who, of course, is another Salem host. And I found PragerU, and I read all of his books, one after the other, that summer of 2020, because I had nothing else to do. I was sitting, during COVID, and he influenced my thinking so much. And so I actually reached out to him to thank him for his influence on me. And he very graciously invited me to sit and listen to an hour of his radio show. He ended up inviting me onto his radio show just to chit chat. And then from there, we developed this great personal and professional relationship. And now I work for Salem as a conservative host. So how
That's
about that,
awesome.
180?
Yeah, Dennis is so great. He's just so nice and just such a great guy. But going back to what you mentioned about COVID, I think it's so sad that so many students missed out on the in-person learning during COVID, whether you were a college student or in high school or lower school. I mean, all of the learning that was lost there. How do you feel like Harvard kind of handled the remote learning aspect of maybe 1 to 2 years of your college experience?
Well, it was hard for everyone. I mean, I think that many of my professors and teaching fellows handled it the best that they could. But of course, the quality of the education was diminished, and people were extremely lenient. Also, because we were on Zoom, so deadlines were not as firm as they usually would be in person. So look, it's just a fact that we had a step down in our educative experience while we were online. But again, I feel so lucky because at least I was in college when this happened. I can't imagine what it must be like for, people who are younger, and those are really the formative years of their education. And for them to just have to be online and not, and for them to have a step down, that impacted, that cohort of people way more than it would impact someone like me. So I feel kind of lucky that I just barely escaped.
Yeah, for